In our last episode, we saw that the Muslims were rushing towards Daumat al-Jandal after the conquest of Ain al-Tamar. They reached there with 6,000 fighters. Daumat al-Jandal was a fortified Arab town, and the Muslims were already blockading Daumat al-Jandal, were not experienced in siege warfare. So they could not establish an effective blockade. They were sending patrols from one camp outside of the city. So some of the exits of the town were not guarded all the time, and the locals could supply themselves through those routes. On the other hand, the Muslims under the command of Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu had much more experience in conquering fortified cities. So Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu ordered to merge the two Muslim armies and established 4 camps on 4 sides of the town. Now, there was no option for the rebels to get supply from outside. Soon they started to run out of resources and got desperate. They launched several sorties in different directions to drive the Muslims away. But none of these attempts were successful. Eventually, the rebels lost their hope and surrounded unconditionally. Then Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu returned to Hira in September of 633. Upon reaching Hira, the Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu got grave news. 2 Sassanid imperial armies were marching towards the Muslims. Also, several Arab tribes from previously conquered areas started to gather their forces in a place called Mosiah. Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu understood that if the enemies combined their forces, the Muslims would be vastly outnumbered. So he planned to launch strike forces in groups to eliminate the threat. Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu sent one group of Muslims under the command of Kaka ibn Amr to attack one of the approaching Sassanid imperial army. The army under the command of Kaka ibn Amr met the enemy at a place called Husaid. The fighting was brutal, but in the end, the Muslims could defeat the enemies. When this battle was taking place, the other Sassanid army was at a location called Khanasif. They heard both the news of approaching Muslim army under Abu Layla and the news of Sassanid defeat in Husaid. They decided to flee from Khanasif and join the local Arab force in Mosiah. So when the second Muslim army reached Khanasif, they found no enemy waiting for them. Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu already anticipated such a move from the enemy. So in the meantime, he prepared another group of Muslim soldiers from Ain al-Tamar. These 3 Muslim groups quickly merged towards Mosiah and launched a 3-pronged attack in the enemy camp during night. The enemies had no anticipation of such an attack, and panic and chaos engulfed the enemy camp. They could not put up any effective resistance and were obliterated by the Muslims. With these victories, the immediate threat to the Muslim land from the Sassanids were eliminated. Then Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu focused on further consolidating the influence of Islamic Caliphate in Iraq. He wanted to bring the whole western side of the Euphrates under the Islamic Caliphate. Accordingly, he led the Muslims toward the northmost Sassanid stronghold along the Euphrates, a place called Firaz. Firaz was actually an outpost of the Sassanid Byzantine border. The Byzantines were already fighting the Muslims in other fronts in Syria. We will cover those events in future episodes inshallah. So the Islamic conquest was not unknown to the Byzantines. To stop the Muslims, the Sassanid and the Byzantine troops stationed at a border near Firaz decided to join forces. Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu stationed his troops in such a way so that the enemies had to cross the Euphrates to reach the Muslims. As soon as they crossed the bridge, the Muslim front line engaged them. The Muslim wings launched swift attack from both sides and outflanking the combined Sassanid Byzantine forces took control of the bridge. So the enemies were now trapped between 2 Muslim groups. This battle ended up in another decisive victory for the Muslims. The whole of Iraq came under the Islamic Caliphate. When Khalid radiallahu ta'ala anhu returned to Hira from Firaz, he found a letter from Khalifa Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu waiting for him. In the letter, it stated that the Muslim armies in Syria were in a grave danger and needed quick reinforcement. Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu ordered Khalid radiyallahu ta'ala anhu to secure the region of Iraq with enough force and then march to Syria with the rest. There were two established routes to go to Syria from Hira. One was the north route along the Euphrates River through the Byzantine Empire. There was no doubt that the Byzantine troops stationed there would ambush the Muslims and slow down their advancement. The southern route was through Daumat al-Jandal. This was a safer route, but it would take a long time to cover the distance. Between these two routes, there was the vast waterless desert of Syria, which was in no way suitable for the large army to march through. After thinking for a while, Khalid radiyallahu ta'ala anhu decided to do seemingly impossible, march through the desert to reach Syria in the shortest possible time. The story of the great march of Khalid radiyallahu ta'ala anhu has been enshrined in history as one of the most brilliant military maneuvers. How Khalid radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and the Muslims accomplished this impossible task will be the story of the next episode, inshallah. So stay tuned.